simile of the cloth, which is number 7 in the middle-length discourses. Within the overall themes of this Vasa, this is the last simile of the cloth, which is number 7 in the middle-length discourse. This sutta is, or this week, is the last week in which we're focusing on the kilesas, or defilements, impediments, hindrances, and their disappearance. And then in the next following a few weeks, we would be focusing on the states that are cultivated as the states related to samadhi, to meditation, and the states associated with the jhana meditation and associated with the formless meditations. And then during the last month of the Vasa, we want to focus on the liberation of the mind, or the citta, which is freed from craving, which is one of the main hallmarks of the goal for which we have entered into this path of training, for the eradication of suffering, the destruction of the asavas, the experience of freedom, and the knowing that what had to be done has been done. The holy life has been lived, and there's no more coming to another rebirth after this. So this is the last sutta on the section talking about the kilesas. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. The Buddha addressed the mendicants, Venerable Sir, they replied, and the Buddha said, suppose there was a cloth that was dirty and soiled. No matter what dye the dyer applied, whether blue or yellow or red or magenta, it would look poorly dyed and impure in color. Why is that? Because of the impurity of the cloth. In the same way, when the mind is corrupt, a bad destiny is to be expected. And that phrase about the mind being corrupt, it's sang kilikte, and then dukati is a bad destination. There's something that's picked up at the end of this sutta about the different ceremonies of bathing in the various rivers, and saying it doesn't matter how many rivers you bathe in, if the mind is corrupt, it doesn't have the desired effect. But if the mind is pure, you can bathe in any well, whatever well is you have on your property, you can bathe there, and you will become clean. So this has to do both with things that are more devotional in nature, like visiting a temple, offering flowers and incense and water at the statue of the Buddha, or doing traditional acts of charity, such as giving a meal to the Sangha, or even giving charitable things to the poor, bowing, doing 108 bows, chanting, reciting the words of the Buddha. All of these things will be just ineffective if the mind is corrupt. And I was saying the mind is corrupt, that's a kind of a strong word, isn't it? It's very judgmental. And we know that sometimes a person is experiencing some kind of a emotional trauma or emotional difficulties or challenging circumstances where there are negative emotions, and you may have like a lot of self-doubt, a lot of suffering with craving and greed, or suffering with a resentment and grudges, and you would like to have these states go away, but you don't yet know how to make the states go away. And so then this sutta is sort of like, could seem to be like too strong. If I was to think, I have developed a grudge, and I don't yet know how to get out of my grudge. I'm just kind of sort of like sticking with the repetitive thoughts against, somebody that I resent or something like that. But truly, the Buddha is giving this strong teaching because he wants the bhikkhus that he's speaking to raise their game to a higher level, and to, not be satisfied with just keeping forms, but instead to feel that spiritual urgency that if there's any kind of corruption in the mind, we've got to find out how to make it go away. And then the second part of the simile, the Buddha said, suppose there was a cloth that was pure and clean. No matter what dye the dyer applied, whether blue, yellow, red, or magenta, it would look well dyed and pure in color. Why is that? Because of the purity of the cloth. In the same way, when the mind isn't corrupt, a good destiny is to be expected. Normally we do dyeing here at the monastery at least 2 or 3 times a year. It could be more often depending on how you're practiced or what kind of center you're in. And dyeing cloth is really a skillful deed. It's not just like taking an instant meal out of the freezer and putting it in the microwave, and 3 minutes later you have a meal. We have to get many factors to be done correctly, or else the dye doesn't work properly. There are 6 or 7 different ways that a batch of dyeing can go wrong. We have to keep a diary. Each time we do the dyeing, we try to make a record of exactly like how hot was the water and how much we did of each thing and what kind of cloth we put in at the beginning and what was the result. And so then if one gets all of the factors to come together, and you get a lovely, even, deep, rich, like in our case, we're trying to get the color to be not pale and washed out looking, but to be well saturated. Then we want to really be able to remember very clearly how it happened at that time. We had a good success with dyeing. And so it's the same way then with these states of mind. I think he's using the dying as the simile because dying is actually quite a skillful craft. And then when we're dyeing cloth, it's over dyeing the cloth that we had before, and with the use, it gets to be somewhat faded. And then you have to dye it to bring back the richness of the color. So if the cloth is greasy, or if the cloth has any stains on it, then it will, the greasy spots or the stained spots will be showing later on. Now it says, what are the corruptions of the mind? I'm trying to make my little screen to go. The corruptions of the mind. What are the corruptions of the mind? In this translation, covetousness and immoral greed, ill will, anger, hostility, disdain, contempt, jealousy, stinginess, deceit, deviousness, obstinacy, aggression, conceit, arrogance, vanity, and negligence are corruptions of the mind. The word that's translated as a corruption in Pali, it's upakileso. A kilesa means a corruption, and then upa is a prefix that could mean a higher, something higher, or something that's on top of something else. It can also mean something that's smaller, or something that's like a more refined. So in this case, the major corruptions of the mind would be greed, hatred, and delusion, lobha, dosa, and moha. And then those three are not listed on this list. So this list is all more of the smaller or less major manifestations of greed, hatred, and delusion. I can give you another example. Let's see if I can get it to come up. Here's another sutta about corruption, in which he says that there are 4 corruptions of bhikkhus, or 4 corruptions of monastics. And those corruptions are some ascetics and Brahmins who drink liquor, some ascetics and Brahmins who have sex, some ascetics and Brahmins who accept gold and money, and some ascetics and Brahmins who make a living the wrong way, not avoiding wrong livelihood. And what you see in that example is the major precepts of not stealing, not killing, and not lying would be the major kilesas of a monk. But if somebody has got their basic morality together, then the monk, compared to a layperson, is supposed to be at a higher level because they're absolutely not using liquor, not having any sexual contact whatsoever, not practicing any what they call wrong livelihood, which is like trading or being involved in making their like teaching of the Dhamma into some kind of trading for money, and then not using gold and silver. And so those are supposed to be the practices that cause a person to respect a recluse or a monastic who's keeping a higher and more challenging level of moral precepts because they're keeping these extra precepts in addition to the basic ones. Yeah, I think it may be interesting to look a little bit more at this list and make sure, try to get them fixed in your mind. So what's translated here as covetousness and immoral greed, abhijja means envy, covetousness. So that's where if a person is, if another person is having good fortune, if you feel kind of like resentful and unhappy because of somebody else's good fortune, or if somebody has gained something, they've gained some success and you would like to have what they have gained. And then visama is sama is peaceful or harmonious. Visama is disharmonious. So then covetous, disharmonious, and then lobha is greed. So the kind of greed that's causing an upset in the community. And then the next one translated as ill will is called vyapada. That's the, sometimes it's called ill will because actually you are ill. It makes you ill. It makes you ill to have ill will, to be wishing for harm to another. That wish of harm, specifically comes back on you. And then by contrast, krodha, it just means anger. And krodha is much more like a bodily reaction that doesn't have that much of a fixed, settled grudge or a settled intention to it. It's just something that flares up and flashes up, and it could go away quickly unless somebody has got this strongly ingrained in them, and then you could have somebody for whom anger just keeps arising again and again, even without provocations. And then the next one is called upanaho, which is translated as disdain. That has the specific meaning of a grudge or resentment. And then the next one called contempt, that's makko. That is putting another person down, depreciating their worth. And the next one, it's called palaso, and that is means it has to do with having an enemy, unmercifulness, malice, or spite. And then issa is, I guess you could say, envy. And then matcharya is avarice. That means you don't want to share what you have. You're stingy. And then maya is a word for magic. And in this case, it's referring to a deceit or fraud. And then tambo is vanity. Sarambho is another word for impetuous anger involving danger to beings. Mano is, mano means a measure. So mano is in this case referring to conceit. I think the main meaning is if it's a conceit, if you think that you're better than others. It could be an opposite kind of conceit if you think you're worse than others. And then ati mano is the extreme of mano. So ati means like going beyond the bounds. And that's referring to pride. So conceit and pride. And then mado is intoxication. It's easy to remember because it has the word mad in it, but it's particularly referring to becoming intoxicated with sensual pleasures. And then pamado is becoming very negligent because of sensual pleasures. So pa means even stronger. So mado is negligent. Pamado is really negligent. Pamado would be like if you are almost in a blackout because of being so swept up with some kind of negligence, having lost, whether it's because you smoked something or you drank something, or just because you've gotten yourself so worked up that you're carried away. And then afterwards, you're not even able to clearly remember what you did or what the quarrel was about. So this is kind of like if somebody is suffering emotionally, if someone is suffering emotionally, and if they have got a lot of negative habits of the mind, it could even be worthwhile to write this list down on, an index card, and to reflect and kind of get your thinking together about what this list means to you, and what if any of these are more like the trap that you fall into more often, and then actually do like a daily inventory of yourself. When you get up in the morning, look at the list and think, am I in danger of falling into any of these traps today? How could I avoid falling into these traps? And then before sleeping at night, you could review the day and say, well, was I able to keep clean on these different factors or not? And focusing in that way is designed to actually, by putting a certain kind of like a sweat equity into it, that exerting a strong and effort on the problem. That's really not how this problem is solved. It's not solved by willpower, but exerting willpower and effort gets certain patterns imprinted into the mind. And if these ideas or these patterns are imprinted into the mind, then there's a chance, like if you said that coda, that flash of anger, if that's like the one that you feel that you're the most in danger of, and you kind of like you reflect about that and say, when I flared up in anger, what was going on? Was I tired? when it happened? Was I hungry when it happened? Did somebody insult my pride when it happened? Was it something that seemed like a danger when it happened? Was it because somebody is threatening my friend when it happened? And so you find out what are the triggers that cause that coda to flare up. And so then when you're thinking about the day ahead, you can say, well, are these triggers going to be present or not present? In order to guard yourself? If you could be, if you notice how these upakilesas are the ones that are common for you, how you experience it in the body when it flares up. So if I have fallen into the state of having a grudge, I notice that the same monotonous negative thinking about the person whom I resent keeps like coming back again and again. It's like a broken record. And even though I'm trying to, think about other things, very frequently the same pattern of thoughts keeps coming again and again. And so then, so that's the pattern. And so having figured out the pattern, then see if there's a way to change the pattern, like even to change the pattern with the body. So if I said that I noticed that when one of these kilesas comes along, that the body becomes tense. And I think about how can I untie the knot in my shoulder? How can I untie the tension that I'm holding in the body? And if I know how to take a shower or do some yoga or do some, some gentle stretching kind of exercises, and I may see that the rigid, intense quality of the mind and the tension in the body are like two parts of the same pattern. If I can undo the tension in the body, then it might be easier to undo the tension in the mind. So I'm just saying that you should, you may, if you want to get your practice to a higher level, even though you're being compassionate with yourself and you're being understanding and you know that you're not torturing yourself because with causes and conditions, these upakilesas still are occurring for you. It's not torture, it's training. So those are two different things. There's a question that came along about ignorance is affecting lobha, dosa, and moha. That's true. And sometimes you see the four floods, which is ignorance, lobha, dosa, moha. So you see the four, and ignorance is indeed always a factor. And then these upakilesas will have a different combination of factors. Like you could say that envy has a combination of both greed and anger, are both present in envy. Conceit, you could say, has got the quality of a spirit greed and a strong avidya, strong ignorance, because you're thinking, I am somebody. So let's return to the sutta. A mendicant who understands that covetousness and immoral greed are corruptions of the mind gives them up. And the word that's called understanding is related to a direct experience, direct knowledge. And now this is coming to exactly the point that the comment was making, that avidya is so important. If you want to train the mind, simply becoming more honest with yourself and understanding that these qualities are corruptions of the mind, that by itself can be enough to be able to let them go. And then likewise for all of the 10 qualities. If you understand, having understood them for what they really are, then give them up. I was talking before about trying to draw the distinction between torturing the mind or self-torture and training. So if you suppose you have a puppy, an animal who, whenever you go out of the house, they cry. We had a neighbor like this. Whenever the owner left the apartment, the dog would start howling, and it would sit in the empty apartment by themselves, like from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. crying and howling and oh, and it was like the dog needed to learn how to calm down. And so teaching the dog how to calm down is not torturing the dog. It's helping the dog to use some devices. I think if you put the dog in a crate, then the dog kind of like settles down much more easily than if they're wandering around, something like that. So training the mind is the opposite of torturing the mind. It's an act of kindness. If you're able to give up these qualities, then you would get experiential confidence in the triple gem. They have experiential confidence in the Buddha. The Blessed One is perfected, a fully awakened Buddha, accomplished in knowledge and conduct, holy knower of the worlds, supreme guide for those who wish to train, teacher of gods and humans, awakened and blessed. They have experiential confidence in the teaching. The teaching is well explained by the Buddha, visible in this very life, immediately effective, inviting inspection, relevant, so that sensible people can know it for themselves. They have experiential confidence in the Sangha. The Sangha of the Buddha's disciples is practicing the way that's good, direct, methodical, and proper. It consists of the 4 pairs, the 8 individuals. This is the Sangha of the Buddha's disciples that's worthy of offerings dedicated to gods, worthy of hospitality, worthy of religious donation, worthy of greeting with joined palms, and is the supreme field of merit for the world. So when a mendicant has discarded, eliminated, released, given up, and relinquished to this extent, thinking I have experiential confidence in the Buddha and so forth. So here's another, like a pile of words. Each one has got a little bit of a different flavor. Which says discarded. The Pali word is vanta. That means vomit. So whatever it is. And then mutta is to become free. Pahina is letting go. Patinasatam I'm sorry, I should have said chatta is discarding. Vanta, eliminating is anyway, so you discard it, throw it up, become free. This giving up, this is that experience that somebody, this is definitely a higher level of giving up that happens because of going into deep meditation, because of having insight into dukkha and everything that's associated with the cause of dukkha. Or when you gain what's called this nibbida, this losing interest in holding on to and perpetuating the things that are going to perpetuate your suffering, then you give it up. And then this last phrase, relinquishing, is also very interesting. It's like after you gain success and gain real freedom from one or all of the upakilesas, of the defilements of the mind, and the mind is pure, but one has not yet fully gained the fruit of awakening at the certain level, then it's possible that with a sufficient provocation, those qualities that you have given up could come back. And this process of relinquishing, that's the last step. It's like after one has become free from something, there's a further transformation of the mind in which you are not going to pick it up again. And again, this is in connection with having this confidence, experiential confidence in the Triple Gem. Finding joy in the meaning and the teaching. Finding joy connected to the teaching. And this distinction between the meaning and the teaching, that's also might be helpful. The atta, the teaching is the teaching. That's the Dhamma. It's the way pointed out to that the Buddhas and that the text, the Dhamma texts are giving you, that are showing the way. And then the atta is more personal. It's like, what does it mean to me? What good is it for me? So the import, the significance that it has for you is the meaning. And so there's both of those things are in play. I think I want to pause here and see if we have any questions or comments so far. Any questions? Raise your hand. Let me see you raise a hand and unmute yourself when I call on you. If there's no questions, I'll go ahead. So, in working with these upakilesas, first you saw them honestly for what they are. And then you applied it in terms of your confidence in the Triple Gem. And then discovering this joy, this relief, this release. This is called pamoja, which is not referring to the very unique and special kind of piti and sukha, or the special pleasure and happiness that can come about during samadhi or during deep meditation. But this is an everyday kind of a joy, and it's so beneficial in being able to dispel and protect oneself, to ward off the arising of these upakilesas, if you know how to gladden the mind. Okay, I'm going to call on somebody and ask them, do you know how to gladden the mind, and how do you do it? Panyathara, do you have an answer? Come, sit over here and get an answer. How to gladden the mind?
Okay. I don't know if I have a full answer for this.
I think if you sit here, you'll be in the camera.
Okay. I don't know if I can completely answer this, though a couple things are coming up for me. During winter retreat, we were taking in a lot of teachings from Maya Kema, and this reminds me of something that she said in some of her teachings, which was, if, like, for example, a feeling of ill will towards another person arises, then kind of using substitution. So substituting for the opposite. So if ill will arises, then substituting with loving kindness. And that form of substitution can help calm the mind and gladden the mind if we know that it's there, and we know that we can just substitute for something else, being patient with that. And two other things that came to mind were just like, for example, I do like a gratitude practice every day where I just write down at least one thing that I'm grateful for every day in the morning. So it's kind of helping me gladden the mind and appreciate the things that are already around. There was something else, but oh yeah. Sometimes I find that, like, when I appreciate something in another person and I tell them that, it just like naturally gladdens the mind. And then, like, if you want to feel appreciated, the best thing to do is actually appreciate another person, which is also something Maya Kema said. So
Great, thank you. Of those who are online, would anybody like to mention a different way that they can gladden the mind? Or should I just call on you? Okay, Sharanya, you know how to do this. I know you know how to do this. So how do you gladden the mind?
Well, I think even when I'm feeling bad, right? If I just practice mindfulness, somehow it just seems to make things better. So it brings to mind all of the Dharma teachings, knowing that it's impermanent, knowing that this is not self. Um, and I think for me, just appreciating the really small things, particularly in comparison to not having had that early in my life, and expressing gratitude for it. But I realized that if you just have a regular meditation practice, it just gives this background kind of just contentment that maybe we kind of forget if you're so busy kind of pursuing things.
Great. Great. Thank you. So now the sutta brings you to the spiral path of this is part of dependent origination. Thinking, I have discarded, eliminated, released, given up, and relinquished the upakilesas. To this extent, they find joy in the meaning and teaching. They find joy connected to the teaching. When they're joyful, rapture springs up. That's the piety, the particular pleasant experience that can happen if one is able to obtain some concentration in the meditation session. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, they feel bliss. In this case, the bliss is the translation for sukha, which is just a very general, it's not the same thing as sensual pleasure, it's just a very generalized happiness. When they are blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. The chittang samadhyati, that would be concentration, or this Bhante Sujato is using immersion in samadhi as the term. When a mendicant of such ethics, such qualities, and such wisdom eats boiled fine rice and the dark grains with the dark grains picked out and served with many soups and sauces, that is no obstacle to him. That would mean receiving a luxurious meal could be an occasion for greed to arise, but even a very luxurious meal does not make a danger for this mendicant. Compare with cloth that is dirty and soiled. It can be made pure and clean by pure water, or unrefined gold, which can be made pure and bright by the forge. In the same way, the mendicant of such ethics, of such qualities, of such wisdom, eats boiled fine rice with dark grains picked out, served with many soups and sauces, that is no obstacle for them. Then, once you have developed, this is like a part of that spiral path, that upward leading path, getting up to the point of obtaining samadhi, that's obtaining the jhana meditation, whether it's first, second, third, or fourth jhana. whether it's the jhana that's defined by being secluded from the hindrances, which is very relevant to this teaching. It's like once you gain seclusion from the upakilesas and you realize, wow, I'm free. They're not present in me right now. Then that's so blissful. The piti arises because of that. And then with the abandoning of thought, of thinking, you obtain the second jhana. With the abandoning of piety or of bliss, you gain the third jhana. And then with the abandoning of pain and pleasure and the previous disappearance of joy and grief, you obtain the fourth jhana. So all of these qualities could be obtained by one who has found out how to dispel the upakilesas and to gladden the mind. Then the next thing they ought to do is meditate, spreading a heart full of love to one direction, to the second, to the third, and to the fourth. In the same way, above, below, across, everywhere, all around, they spread the heart full of love to the whole world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. And likewise, the heart of compassion, the heart full of rejoicing in the success of others, the sympathetic joy, and the heart full of equanimity. Meditate, spreading the heart with those qualities in all directions, everywhere, all around, for the whole world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free from enmity and ill will. If somebody has done this practice of the Brahma Viharas very regularly, it's a consistent part of their practice, they on a daily basis or on a very regular basis, that they are doing this meditation so that the mind is able to gain samadhi based on the Brahma Viharas, based on the four sublime states, then just thinking of the four sublime states can be a way of entering into the samadhi of tranquil meditation, or alternatively, if you enter tranquil meditation, then according to this sutta, the next thing you should do is to develop those four practices. And now comes insight. And I feel it's very, so many of the teachings are a type of causation, a causal chain, like you set this factor in place and that allows this factor, and the second factor allows the third factor, and the third factor allows the fourth factor. So if you would like to have this insight, this sutta is telling you, put these other factors in place. And if you can get them all in place up to the Brahma Viharas, then you have an opportunity for this insight. Ati idang, this is, that's referring to the state of mind. There is what is worse than this. There is what is better than this. And there is an escape beyond the scope of perception. So this is a state where one has got a super clear understanding about what state of mind you are in. How much, to what extent has the mind become pliable, refined, and pure? To what extent have you realized the transforming wisdom of becoming really freed from wrong views? To what extent have you gotten a glimpse of awakening? To what extent is that glimpse of awakening something that's more than something you can see for a few seconds and you lose it, or something that you can keep for longer? And so it's the insight that arises from here that, like the path, the noble path, is kind of like opening up, and you can see the way forward. You can see not just getting out of my neurotic suffering, but you can really see the goal. Knowing and seeing like this, their mind is freed from defilements of sensuality, the desire to be reborn, and ignorance. When they're freed, they know they're freed. They understand rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. What had to be done has been done. There is no return to any state of existence. This is called a mendicant who is bathed with the inner bathing. And now comes the closing with this beautiful poem. Now at that time, the Brahmin Sundarika Bharadvaja was sitting not far from the Buddha. He said to the Buddha, "But does Master Gautama go to the river Bahuka to bathe?" And the Buddha replies, "Brahmin, why go to the river Bahuka? What can the river Bahuka do?" He says, many people agree that the river Bahuka bestows cleanliness and merit, and many people wash off their bad deeds in the river Bahuka. Then the Buddha addressed Sundarika in verse. The Bahuka and the Adhikaka, the Gaya and the Sundarika too, Sarasvati and Payaga, and the river Bahumati. A fool can constantly plunge into them, but it won't purify their dark deeds. What can the Sundarika do? What the Payaga or the Bahuka? They can't cleanse a cruel and criminal person from their bad deeds. For the pure in heart, it's always the spring festival or the Sabbath. For the pure in heart and clean of deed, their vows will always be fulfilled. It's here alone that you should bathe, Brahmin, making yourself a sanctuary for all creatures. If you speak no lies, nor harm any living creature, nor steal anything not given, and you're faithful and not stingy, what is the point of going to Gaya? For any well may be your Gaya. Even before having the full attainment of Nibbana, there are the states in which a person is destined to be reborn in a heavenly realm because of their loving kindness and because of their right view and their purification of the upakilesas. And so a person in a certain way, the different kinds of heaven are both a destiny and also a metaphor that the state that a person can experience in the here and now. So right here, right now, one is bound for heaven, confident that you would not be reborn into a lower realm. You would not be reborn into a realm of the animal realm or one of the unfortunate hellish realms that is so painful. You would feel, if you could sustain this, even before you get noble attainments, you would have that confidence that at least you will be reborn at a level where you can hear and have an opportunity in the Dhamma, in the human realm, or else be reborn in a heavenly realm, or else be reborn into one of the immaterial realms. And from those realms, if you have some noble attainments, you may feel confident that you're destined for the full awakening. And so that sense of safety, you would talk about gladdening the mind. What could be more glad than to know that no matter what, I'm not going to be reborn into a woeful state. It's only less desirable than knowing no matter what happens, I'm not going to be reborn at all. And when the Buddha had spoken, the Brahmin Sundarika Bharadvaja said to the Buddha, "Excellent, Master Gautama, excellent," as if he were righting the overturned, or revealing the hidden, or pointing out the path to the lost, or lighting a lamp in the dark, so people with a good eye can see what's there. Master Gautama has made the teaching clear in many ways. I go for refuge to Master Gautama, to the teaching, and to the mendicant Sangha. Sir, I receive the going forth in ordination. May I receive the going forth in ordination in the Buddha's presence. And this Brahmin received the going forth, the ordination in the Buddha's presence. Not long after his ordination, Venerable Bharadvaja, living alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, and resolute, soon realized the supreme end of the spiritual path in this very life. He lived having achieved with his own insight the goal for which a gentleman rightly go forth from the lay life to homelessness. He understood rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. What had to be done has been done. There is no return to this state of existence. So, the metaphor of the dirty cloth, which doesn't take a stain properly, compared with the pure cloth, which does receive the stain and receives it evenly and comes out well dyed, evenly dyed, fully and properly dyed. That's a very simple metaphor. But it's referring to something that has got many levels and factors of skill in it. So one should not feel the least bit ashamed or depressed if you have not yet been able to permanently or consistently make all of those upakilesas disappear and be warded off so that they don't pop up again. But you may be able to realize that actually some of them are really gone. And no more that if someone knocked down your sandcastle at the beach, you wouldn't have a temper tantrum because you're a grown-up now, you're not a baby anymore. And so just the same way, you know, some of these faults are actually really gone. You've already obtained some level of spiritual maturity where you have outgrown some of these upakilesas, some of these minor faults, or at least the minor faults have become attenuated So you very rarely, or even for years at a time, might not have them rise up and become a factor for you. So this concludes my reflection about this sutta.